Kazuo Ishiguro fans, rejoice! I am here today to tier rank all of Kazuo Ishiguro's novels. So, how are you guys doing today? And I am super excited to do this because we are doing this tier ranking with a twist. And the twist is that I'm ranking these books on a bell curve. There are going to be some winners and there are going to be some losers. And I want to give all these books, except the Unconsoled, an S. But I hope this video can create a roadmap for any new Ishiguro fans who maybe have read Never Let Me Go or Remains of the Day, and they want to see what books are best. And if you guys would like to help those readers out, comment your list down below so that they can maybe find some similarities between all of our lists. And of course, if you guys are really into Kazuo Ishiguro, I'm planning on posting a bunch of deep dives into all these novels, so subscribe if you want to see more Ishiguro content. So our first book is An Artist of the Floating World, and I have a very hot take on this book, and I'm going to give it an A, everybody. I love An Artist of the Floating World. And of course, all of these books have an unreliable narrator in them, right? You know, that is like the staple of Ishiguro's work. And right now we are going to move into spoiler territory. So if you are a new reader, you maybe want to hop through these selections or just go to the end of this video and see what the rankings look like at the end. So An Artist of the Floating World is really, I feel like, where Ishiguro stepped into his own unique self, because A Pale View of the Hills, as we'll talk about, is a good work. It's a unique work, but the protagonist, the unreliable narrator Ono in this novel, he really sells it, in my opinion. So Ono is a former propaganda artist for the Japanese government, you know, during pre-World War II and World War II times. And, you know, that is obviously, once the war is over, that is a very contentious position to be, because he was like in a leadership position for that job. And you guys can only imagine, you know, post-war, that a lot of different people have different feelings. But Ono, because he one, has an ego, he had an artistic career before World War II, and because of a lot of other things, the whole floating world stuff, which we'll talk about in a second, he's just the perfect unreliable narrator. He's getting older, and you know, this one's really good because you start to see the cracks, because there's a huge contrast, and that's how you can really work these unreliable narrators, is you create the contrast. And the contrast is between the reality that he's in now and the floating world, because the floating world is this ephemeral thing, but it really is just you could call it like a red light district, or a series of districts where there's geishas and sake and drinks and parties. And Ono, before World War II, was an artist that depicted this lifestyle. He created art that depicted these areas. He was an artist of the floating world. So we have this dreamlike reality that's also now gone. So he has lost his position in society. His family, his former mentees do not want to talk to him. There's that heartbreaking scene. You know, I don't know how heartbreaking it is, but when he talks to one of his old students, you know, or one of his old employees and people that he helped, and the guy just doesn't want to talk to him and is raging and screaming, you know, just doesn't want to talk to him. And it's like, oh man, like, you know, that's what life is sometimes, especially when you make a polarized decision to become World War II propaganda artist. And then we also see, because, you know, after World War II, with industrialism and American ideals coming in, among other things, the whole floating world district and some of the bourgeoisie aspects of Japanese society with geishas and some of this started to dry up. So he's now looking back at this reality and at his memories and at what has happened through this lens of emptiness. But this book gives me the feeling of like black and green and, you know, light, you know, lanterns at night and walking around. It's secretive. It's just really good. It's a short book. It's an easy read. It's one of actually the easier reads on this list, and that's why I think makes it powerful, that you could show someone this unreliable narrator concept. I'm an absolute mark. I love stuff that's like Japanese in general, especially pre or post World War II Japanese. You know, either right before or right after, because it's such a contrast with ideals and trying to figure stuff out. You know, Mishima does a great job at this, and you know, Ishiguro is really in the line of, you know, we could say it goes from Proust, and then in the the Asian lineage, it could go Proust to Mishima to Ishiguro, because if we look at Mishima's Sea of Fertility tetralogy, it is about, you know, pre and post World War II characters who are unreliable and, you know, getting maybe not as unreliable, but it's very stream of consciousness. So an A for An Artist of the Floating World. Next, we have Never Let Me Go, and I'm going to give this one a D. I mean, I'm just joking. I'm giving this one an S. Never Let Me Go is an absolute banger, man, because this is where Ishiguro really shows how to incorporate atheism into writing. He does in every single book, but his atheism in this book is absolutely astounding. And you're like, what do you mean by that? Well, he just turns the clock back. You know, there are obviously so many scenes with Ruth, Tommy, and Kathy, and you know, that heartbreaking scene at the end where Tommy and Kathy go and ask, their old headmasters about love. And like, there are so many different things that happen in this text that are just absolutely heartbreaking. It's one of the, Ishiguro had this great idea that I'm just going to make the human life go from 80 or whatever to 20 or 25, and then we're going to add the dark academia and the school aspect and like all these different things and turn them into clones and make it sci-fi, make it Britain, a lot of different things are working here. And then he adds a masterful use of prose, because this is one of his a little bit of a later work, so he had a lot of practice. He had already done Remains of the Day, which is an absolute masterpiece. He had already done all of these works, so he had the ability to write a fantastic novel. So next we have When We Were Orphans. Now I'm honestly going to throw this, I might change this pick. I'm gonna give it a C- to start. It could be a D+ though, because When We Were Orphans has a lot of problems. It's a little bit clunky for sure. Ishiguro calls it his weakest novel. I actually really resonate with the character, the detective character trying to figure out what's going on with his life. But then it just kind of starts falling apart, because like a lot of the scenes, a lot of the revelations are just very, someone tells him, well, this is what happens. And it's like, there's like a war scene where he's walking around in a trance, and like a lot of it just doesn't work very well. But I actually was very intrigued by the actual story. Like the actual story was decent, but the execution just wasn't there for When We Were Orphans. And this is one of his, I think, least popular books on Goodreads, like in terms of ratings. Next we have The Buried Giant, and I am going to give The Buried Giant, I'll give this one a C+, if not a B-, because there's some great elements. Like, of course, the ending of this, when they get to the end, and there's a whole aspect with love. There's a lot of atheism in here again, and the whole fog and bringing the Arthurian romance to this. But like for instance, Ursula K. Le Guin hates this book. She was talking crap about this book like a year and a half before she died, man. That's bad when you have like a fantasy and sci-fi legend like talking crap about your book in her like mid to late 80s. But I like the concept of this book, but at times it just felt a little bit boring. Like I understood that they're on this journey, their memory's gone, and it feels like there are just, characters getting thrown in and like helping us go through the novel, but it doesn't feel full. But I will say I am a sucker for King Arthur and Merlin and the whole love story in general, the whole fog and love story thing. I mean, that really, so, we can actually give this a B-. I don't want to screw Ursula K. Le Guin in this for her recommendation of her thumbs down of this. Love her though. Next we have Clara and the Sun, and I have to give this a B, everyone. This book made me cry. I mean, I'm trying to think what books on this made me cry. I think I cried with Never Let Me Go. I think I cried with Clara and the Sun, and that's it. So, I mean, Clara and the Sun, it's a B+, A-. It's actually a way better novel in terms of like writing ability and ideas. So we'll give it an A. It's going to be hard, I guess. We'll give this an A, because I mean, we have seen a lot of movies, a lot of books like show life in a robot, right? Robots, even robots, like this whole idea of a robot with children. But with Ishiguro's writing style and like his mastery of writing and him bringing that to the table, that's something I don't think we've ever seen done before. Just the level of emotions and unreliability, which is so good with a robot who loves, I want to say their master, but their owner. Like there's that love already present. There's a love to serve and love. There's all these things already working on his side for like writing an unreliable story. He has experience in the sci-fi kind of weird field with Never Let Me Go and The Buried Giant. So he's been kind of building up to this, and the execution is way better than The Buried Giant for sure. It's not like one of his it's not as political or as deep as, Remains of the Day or Never Let Me Go or Narrators of the Floating World. We don't get that, but we also get into robot ethics. We get into something that's one of the most important things for us to think about looking forward, but no one's thinking about it at all. The corporations don't care. People don't even care about their own pets. I mean, we can't even worry about robots yet. People don't even teach their own kids to read, write, think. They don't take their pets outside for walks. I mean, people are actually absolute dirtbags. So I can only predict how we're going to treat robots if we can't even treat our own pets and our own kids and our own family and society well. It's going to be a disaster. You can already see the little snooty people and how they're going to treat, things that are just meant to help them. So he gets a great job done on this. He gets all the different sides. He gets the sides of desperation from the parents. He gets, trying to create this model, trying to create, a model of Claire, of the daughter. All these different things, man, are really good. Next, we have The Unconsoled. And I honestly have to give this one a D. I've read this one 2 times. It's really good. but it just fails to execute in so many different ways. And it's like he was trying to bring in some of the remains of the day stuff, and like we're like the porter, like at the very start we hear about the porter, like this is the life of a porter. But there are so many other scenes and jumps and time and place, they're just absolute disasters. And it's just like gave me both times, like I read it the first time and it was like giving me a nauseous feeling, but it was like maybe because I read it, I remember reading it at a job and like I was always kind of tired and on caffeine, and I just didn't have maybe the mental bandwidth, right? But then I read it again during the pandemic, and I had complete mental peace, and there was like nothing going on in my house. Like literally, like I was just here basically alone reading. I read this novel read it over the course of 2 days, and it just fell flat. I reread all of Ishiguro's works over the course of like a month or two, and I was like, this one just really isn't there. And like I said, it was ambitious. I see what he's doing, but overall, I mean, this would be the last one I would give someone. Is it more complicated than When We Were Orphans or A Pale View of the Hills? Is it more ambitious? And it probably actually succeeds in some of those ambitions? Yeah. But in terms of just an actual novel, it's not very, it fails as an experimental novel. It's not Infinite Jest. It's not Gravity's Rainbow. It doesn't really fit. It's not House of Leaves. Like it doesn't reach that far. It just kind of stays in the middle, stays with kind of what he's been doing, and then just adds some confusion to it, which is good at times. But then once again, it's a big book. And when you're doing hundreds of pages of this, and you already know that he's never going to play the piano, and there's never going to be this climactic moment. Like you already know that Ishiguro is not going to give us that. So just, it's just kind of annoying. Next, we have A Pale View of the Hills, and I'm going to give this one a C. I would say I actually really enjoy this book. I enjoy enjoy that it's in Nagasaki, and there's like, crazy scenes like the chick drowning her cats. There's like these. So I would say this one's a solid C. It lags a little bit. You could tell that it's his first novel, but it's overall still pretty good in my opinion. Once again, I would recommend all these books, even the Unconsoled, even though I'm saying that. When you look at it in context of his work, and if you're reading all of his works, it makes sense, and there's actually a lot of things that he works on and plays with that he's never attempted again in any of his novels. There's things in there that Ishiguro executes very well, but I think he just needed someone himself or an editor to, kind of ask some questions and be like, hey, this is not apparent. Like these things are like, why be this vague if you have like you're not ambitiously writing. Last but not least, we have Remains of the Day, and I'm going to give this one an S because this is one of the best novels of an unreliable narrator of all time. I think this is the one. I would say that if you are a reader, this is the best example of an unreliable narrator, and if you are a writer, this is one of the best. This is a masterclass, not just an unreliable narrator, but just looking at actual detail, like seeing the detail of being a butler and everything that goes into that. It is mind-blowing, the amount of detail and tenacity, and you feel like you really like the butler is literally writing this. And most people can't even sell a simple character. Most writers don't have the patience or the skill, or don't write enough drafts or read enough to create a character that even seems believable if they're not doing anything. They could literally just be like a character that's in love with their girlfriend and it seems fake. But now we have this character that is, working for a Nazi sympathizer. He has a lady that's like trying to become his lover. There's all these different things happening around, and he just is totally zoned in on being a butler, and we get all the details, and it's a masterclass in writing and in reading, and it's so enjoyable. And so like all these books that you get this thing in your shoulder, like, oh no. And I enjoy The Remains of the Day because a lot of these books I feel like it has one of the bigger resolutions of all the books. Looking back, and at the end he was like, was it all useless? Like at the end with the ruminations, it's actually pretty good. It's actually pretty wholesome stuff and this is, it's a book that can change your own life. You can look at your own life and be like, where am I being unreliable, or what am I doing right now that I'm going to regret later? Like, what are the memories that I'm trying to create? So if you guys would like to watch some more of my Ishiguro content, there will be some more over here, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.